3 months after moving into their new apartment, David and Amanda were discovering what it meant to live as independent adults for the first time in their marriage. The two-bedroom apartment Helen had helped them secure was a far cry from her spacious house, but it was teaching them valuable lessons about budgeting, responsibility, and gratitude. "The electric bill is $180 this month," Amanda said, looking at the stack of bills on their small kitchen table. "That's $50 more than last month." "We need to be more careful about the air conditioning," David said, "and maybe we should switch to LED bulbs. I never realized how expensive utilities were when your mother was paying them," Amanda admitted. David nodded, calculating their monthly expenses on a piece of paper. "Rent is $1,800, utilities average $250, groceries are about $600, car payments and insurance are $450. We're spending almost our entire income just on basics, and we still owe your mother $3,600, Amanda added, plus interest." The loan from Helen had covered their deposit, first month's rent, and basic furniture from a thrift store. David was paying her back $200 per month, which left very little room for extras in their budget. "The kids are adjusting better than I expected," David said, looking at Emma and Tyler doing homework at the small dining table that served as their only workspace. "They don't have much choice," Amanda said. "Emma had to give up her dance classes, and Tyler can't play travel baseball anymore." "We can't afford those things right now," David said. "Maybe when we get our finances more stable." "When will that be?" Amanda asked. "I don't know," David admitted. "We're barely breaking even as it is." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. David opened it to find his mother standing in the hallway with a bag of groceries. "Mom," David said, surprised, "what are you doing here?" "I brought some things for the kids," Helen said, holding up the bag. "School supplies, some snacks." "You didn't have to do that," David said, though he was grateful for the help. "I know I didn't have to," Helen said. "I wanted to." David invited his mother in, and she looked around the small apartment with interest. "How are you adjusting to the new place?" Helen asked. "It's an adjustment," David said honestly. "Everything costs more than we expected." "Welcome to independent living," Helen said with a slight smile. "Grandma," Tyler called out, running over to hug her. "I missed you." "I missed you too, sweetheart," Helen said, hugging her grandson. "How do you like your new school?" "It's okay," Tyler said. "Different from my old school, but the teachers are nice." Emma joined them, giving her grandmother a more reserved hug. "Hi, Grandma." "Hello, Emma," Helen said. "How are you doing?" "Fine," Emma said, though David could see she was still adjusting to their reduced circumstances. "Mom," David said, "would you like to stay for dinner?" "It's not much, just spaghetti and meatballs, but you're welcome to join us." "I'd like that," Helen said. As they prepared dinner together in the tiny kitchen, David found himself appreciating his mother's presence in a way he never had before. When they had lived in her house, he had taken her contributions for granted. Now, every gesture of help felt precious. "David," Helen said quietly while Amanda was helping the kids with homework, "how are you really doing?" "Honestly," David said, "it's hard. Everything is more expensive than I realized, and we don't have any cushion for emergencies." "Are you regretting the move?" Helen asked. "No," David said, surprising himself with the certainty of his answer. "Mom, I'm grateful you forced us to become independent." "Really?" Helen asked. "Really," David said. "I'm finally understanding what it means to be a responsible adult. I'm learning to budget, to prioritize, to make tough choices. I should have learned these lessons years ago." "Better late than never," Helen said. "Mom," David said, "I want you to know that I think about what we said to you every day. I can't believe we told you to be grateful we let you stay in your own house. You were taking my generosity for granted," Helen said. "It happens in families sometimes, but it shouldn't have happened," David said. "Mom, you gave us everything: free housing, help with the kids, emotional support, and we repaid you by treating you like an inconvenience. You've learned from your mistakes," Helen said. "That's what matters now." Over dinner, Helen watched her son's family navigate their new reality. The apartment was cramped, the furniture was second-hand, and the stress of tight finances was evident. But there was something different about the family dynamic that she found encouraging. "Dad," Emma said, "can we afford to go to the movies this weekend?" "Let me check our budget," David said, pulling out his phone to look at their expense tracking app. "We have $40 left in our entertainment budget for the month." Movie tickets for 4 people would be about $50, Amanda said. Then we can't afford it this weekend, David said. Maybe we could have a movie night at home instead. That sounds fun, Tyler said. We could make popcorn and everything. Helen was impressed by how matter-of-factly David had handled the situation. The old David would have put the movie tickets on a credit card or asked her for money. The new David was learning to live within his means. David, Helen said after dinner, I'm proud of how you're handling your new responsibilities. Thank you, David said. It's not easy, but I'm learning. What's the hardest part? Helen asked. The budgeting, David said. I never realized how much money we were spending on things we didn't really need. When we lived with you, we spent money on restaurants, entertainment, clothes, gadgets. Now we have to think carefully about every purchase. And how does that feel? Helen asked. Stressful, David admitted, but also kind of liberating. I'm not constantly worried about keeping up appearances or impressing people. We're just focused on taking care of our basic needs. That's a healthy perspective, Helen said. After Helen left, David and Amanda sat on their small couch, reflecting on the evening. Your mother seems proud of us, Amanda said. I think she is, David said. And honestly, I'm starting to feel proud of us too. Really? Amanda asked. Even though we're struggling financially. Especially because we're struggling financially, David said. Amanda, for the first time in our marriage, we're truly supporting ourselves. We're not depending on anyone else to bail us out. It's scary though, Amanda said. What if one of us loses our job? What if we have a medical emergency? We don't have any savings. Then we'll figure it out, David said. We'll ask for help if we need it, but we won't expect other people to solve our problems for us. Is that what we were doing before? Amanda asked. That's exactly what we were doing, David said. We were living in Mom's house, taking advantage of her generosity, and then complaining when she didn't give us everything we wanted. I feel terrible about how we treated her, Amanda said. Me too, David said. But Amanda, I think the best way to make up for it is to prove that we've learned our lesson. How do we do that? Amanda asked. By becoming the kind of people who deserve her help, David said. By being grateful for what we have instead of always wanting more. By treating her with respect and love instead of taking her for granted. 6 months after moving into their apartment, David made his final payment on the loan from his mother. He had managed to pay it off 6 months early by taking on extra freelance work and cutting unnecessary expenses. Mom, David said when he handed her the final payment, I want you to know that this loan was about more than money. What do you mean? Helen asked. It was about teaching me responsibility, David said. It was about showing me that I could support my family if I worked hard and made smart choices. And have you learned that lesson? Helen asked. I have, David said. Mom, I'm not the same person who told you to be grateful we let you stay. I understand now what real gratitude looks like. What does it look like? Helen asked. It looks like appreciating what you have instead of always wanting more, David said. It looks like treating people with respect, especially the people who help you. It looks like taking responsibility for your own life instead of expecting others to take care of you. Helen smiled at her son. I'm proud of the man you've become, David. I'm proud of the man I'm becoming, David said. And Mom, I want you to know that I will never again take your love and support for granted. I know you won't, Helen said, because you've learned what it's like to live without it. David nodded. And I never want to live without it again. The son who had once told his mother to be grateful had finally learned what true gratitude meant, and it had transformed not only his relationship with his mother, but his entire approach to life. 2 years after the eviction that changed everything, David stood in his mother's kitchen, helping her prepare Thanksgiving dinner. The irony wasn't lost on him. He was back in the house where he had once felt entitled to make rules for his mother, but now he was there as a grateful guest who understood the difference. David, Helen said as she checked the turkey, would you mind setting the table? We'll be eating in the dining room today. Of course, Mom, David said, immediately moving to help. How many place settings? 8, Helen said. You, Amanda, the kids, me, and your Aunt Rosa's family. David carefully set the table with his mother's good china, remembering how he used to take meals in this house for granted. Now, every invitation to family dinner felt like a gift. Dad, Emma said, now 18, and home from her first semester of college. Remember when we used to live here? I remember, David said. Do you miss it? Sometimes, Emma admitted, but I'm glad we moved out. Really? David was surprised. Why? Because living in our own place taught us to appreciate things more. Emma said, when we lived here, I took everything for granted. Now I understand how hard you and Mom worked to provide for us. David felt proud of his daughter's maturity. The financial struggles of the past 2 years had taught his children valuable lessons about money, work, and gratitude. Plus, Emma continued, I think it's better for you and Grandma to have your own spaces. You both seem happier now. David realized his daughter was right. His relationship with his mother had improved dramatically since they had moved out and established appropriate boundaries. They saw each other regularly, but as independent adults who chose to spend time together, not as people forced to coexist in the same space. Tyler, Helen called from the kitchen, would you help me carry these dishes to the table? Sure, Grandma, Tyler said, now 15 and much more mature than he had been 2 years ago. David watched his son help his grandmother and felt grateful for the relationship they had maintained despite the upheaval. Helen had never taken her anger at David and Amanda out on the children, and she had continued to be a loving, supportive grandmother throughout their transition to independence. Mom, David said as they finished preparing the meal, I want you to know how much this means to us. What means to you? Helen asked. Being invited to family dinner, David said, being welcomed back into your home as guests. David, you're always welcome here, Helen said. You're my family. But we're welcome as family who respect your home and your hospitality, David said, not as people who feel entitled to be here. Helen smiled at her son. That's exactly right. As the extended family gathered around the dinner table, David looked around at the faces of the people he loved most. His mother sat at the head of the table, gracious and dignified as always. Amanda sat beside him, having learned to appreciate Helen's generosity instead of taking it for granted. Emma and Tyler were engaged and respectful, having learned valuable lessons about family relationships. Before we eat, Helen said, I'd like everyone to share something they're grateful for. This year, I'll start, David said. I'm grateful for second chances. I'm grateful that Mom loved me enough to teach me hard lessons about responsibility and respect. And I'm grateful for the family relationships we've rebuilt over the past 2 years. I'm grateful for learning what real independence means, Amanda said. And I'm grateful for Helen's patience as I learned to be a better daughter-in-law. I'm grateful for college, Emma said, and for understanding how much my parents sacrificed to make my education possible. I'm grateful for our apartment, Tyler said, surprising everyone. I like having our own space, and I like that we earned it ourselves. I'm grateful for family that sticks together, even when times are tough, Helen said. And I'm grateful for children and grandchildren who have learned to appreciate what they have. As they shared the meal, David reflected on the incredible journey his family had taken. 2 years ago, he had been an entitled man who told his mother she should be grateful he let her stay in her own house. Today, he was a responsible adult who understood the true meaning of gratitude. Mom, David said after dinner as they cleaned up together, can I ask you something? Of course, Helen said. Do you ever regret evicting us? David asked. Helen thought about the question carefully. Do you regret that I evicted you? No, David said without hesitation. It was the best thing that ever happened to our family. Then, I don't regret it either, Helen said. But it must have been hard for you, David said, watching us struggle, knowing you could help but choosing not to. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done, Helen admitted. But David, sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is let their child face the consequences of their actions, even when those consequences are painful, David asked. Especially when those consequences are painful, Helen said. David, if I had just forgiven you and let you continue living here, what would you have learned? Nothing, David admitted. I would have learned that I could treat you badly and you'd still take care of me. Exactly, Helen said. By forcing you to become independent, I taught you that actions have consequences and that respect isn't optional. You also taught me what I should have been grateful for all along, David said. What's that? Helen asked. A mother who loves me enough to help me become a better person, David said. Even when that help is painful. Helen hugged her son tightly. I love you, David. I love you too, Mom, David said. And I promise I will never again take your love for granted. As the evening wound down and David's family prepared to return to their apartment, Helen felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The difficult decision to evict her son had been vindicated by the positive changes in his character and their relationship. Grandma, Emma said as they were leaving, thank you for dinner. And thank you for teaching Dad to be a better person. Thank you for understanding why I had to do it, Helen said. I understand now, Emma said. You loved him enough to let him fail so he could learn to succeed on his own. Helen nodded. That's exactly right. As David's family drove home to their apartment, David reflected on how much their lives had changed. They lived in a smaller space, had less money, and faced daily challenges that had been invisible when they lived with his mother. But they were happier, more grateful, and more connected as a family. Dad, Tyler said from the back seat, are you glad Grandma kicked us out? Yes, David said. I'm grateful she loved us enough to teach us how to stand on our own feet, even though it was hard, Tyler asked. Especially because it was hard, David said. Tyler, the most important lessons in life are usually the most difficult ones to learn. Will you ever move back in with Grandma? Emma asked. No, David said firmly. We'll always be close to Grandma, but we'll maintain our own home. That's what healthy adults do. Good, Amanda said. I like our independence. I like knowing that we're capable of taking care of ourselves. As they pulled into their apartment complex, David looked up at their modest two-bedroom unit and felt a surge of pride. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. They had earned it through their own efforts, and they maintained it with their own resources. Home sweet home, David said as they walked up the stairs to their apartment. Home sweet home, his family echoed. Man who had once told his mother to be grateful he let her stay had learned the true meaning of gratitude, independence, and family love. The eviction notice that had seemed like the end of the world had actually been the beginning of a better life for everyone involved. Helen's tough love had transformed her son from an entitled dependent into a responsible adult, and their relationship was stronger than it had ever been. Sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is refuse to enable their child's bad behavior, even when that refusal causes temporary pain. David would never again tell anyone to be grateful for living in their own home, because he had learned what it truly meant to be grateful for the love and support of family love that sometimes requires difficult lessons to preserve and strengthen the bonds that matter most. The notice to vacate had been more than an eviction. It had been an invitation to grow up, and David had finally accepted that invitation with the gratitude it deserved. Compartela exporteris. 2 weeks into their 30-day eviction notice, David and Amanda were running out of options and time. Every apartment they could afford was either unavailable or in neighborhoods they didn't want their children living in. Every apartment they wanted was far beyond their financial reach. This one is $2,800 a month, Amanda said, scrolling through rental listings, plus utilities, plus deposits. We'd need almost $8,000 just to move in. We don't have $8,000, David said for the 100th time. We don't even have $3,000. Then what are we supposed to do? Amanda asked, her voice cracking with stress. David had been asking himself the same question. In desperation, he had started reaching out to old friends and distant relatives, hoping someone might be able to help them. I called my cousin Mike, David said. He said we could stay with them for a week or two, but they don't have space for a long-term arrangement. A week or two? Amanda asked. David, we need a permanent solution. I know, David said. But maybe we could buy some time while we figure things out. Figure what out? Amanda demanded. We don't have money for a deposit. We don't have furniture. We don't have anything. David was beginning to understand just how much they had been depending on his mother. Not only had she provided free housing, but all the furniture, appliances, dishes, and household items belonged to her. If they moved out, they would literally have nothing but their clothes and personal belongings. Maybe we could ask Mom for some of the furniture, David suggested. Ask the woman who's evicting us to give us furniture, Amanda asked incredulously. David, she won't even speak to us. Maybe if we explained our situation, David said. Our situation is that we insulted her in her own home and told her she should be grateful we were there, Amanda said. I don't think explaining that is going to help our case. Their conversation was interrupted by Emma coming home from school with tears in her eyes. What's wrong, sweetheart? David asked. Everyone at school is talking about how we're getting evicted, Emma said. They're saying Grandma is kicking us out because we were mean to her. David felt his heart sink. Who told them that? Tyler told his friends, and they told their friends. Emma said. Now everyone knows. What exactly are they saying? Amanda asked. They're saying that we were living in Grandma's house for free and we were ungrateful, Emma said. They're saying we deserved to get kicked out. David realized that the story of their eviction was spreading through their small community, and the narrative was not flattering to his family. Sweetheart, David said, it's more complicated than that, is it? Emma asked. Dad, were we really living here for free? David struggled to answer his daughter's question honestly. Yes, we were. And did you really tell Grandma she should be grateful? Emma continued. David felt ashamed as he nodded. Yes, I did. Then maybe they're right, Emma said. Maybe we did deserve to get kicked out. Emma went to her room, leaving David and Amanda to face the judgment of their 16-year-old daughter. Even our own kids think we're in the wrong, Amanda said. Because we are in the wrong, David said. Amanda, we've been living in denial about this situation. We took advantage of my mother's generosity, and then had the nerve to complain about it. So what do you want to do? Amanda asked. Gravel, beg, humiliate ourselves. If that's what it takes, David said. Amanda, we're about to be homeless. Our pride isn't worth more than our children's stability. That evening, David made a decision that surprised even himself. He wrote a letter to his mother, pouring out his heart and acknowledging the full scope of their mistakes. Dear Mom, David wrote, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say some things that should have been said a long time ago. First, I want to acknowledge that you have been incredibly generous to my family. You allowed us to live in your beautiful home, rent-free, for 2 years. You helped with our children, contributed to household expenses, and asked for nothing in return. Second, I want to admit that we took your generosity for granted. We started acting like we were entitled to live in your house, like it was our right rather than your gift. Third, I want to apologize for the terrible things we said to you. Telling you that you should be grateful we let you stay in your own house was cruel, disrespectful, and completely wrong. I know that words can't undo the hurt we caused you. I know that apologies don't erase the damage we've done to our relationship. But I want you to know that I understand now how badly we failed you. We're facing homelessness in 2 weeks, and while I know that's not your responsibility, I'm hoping you might find it in your heart to give us another chance. I'm not asking you to forget what we did. I'm asking you to consider whether our family relationship is worth preserving despite our terrible mistakes. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took losing everything to make me realize how much you mean to me. David sealed the letter and slipped it under his mother's bedroom door that night. The next morning, David found the letter on the kitchen counter with a note from Helen. I read your letter. We need to talk. Meet me in the living room at 7 p.m. David spent the entire day nervous about the conversation. Was his mother going to give them another chance, or was she going to explain why their apology wasn't enough? At 7 p.m. sharp, David sat in the living room, waiting for his mother. Helen entered wearing a serious expression that gave nothing away. David, Helen said, I read your letter, and David asked hopefully, and I appreciate that you're finally acknowledging what you did wrong, Helen said. Does that mean you'll reconsider the eviction? David asked. Helen was quiet for a long moment. David, do you understand why I'm evicting you? Because we were disrespectful and ungrateful, David said. That's part of it, Helen said. But there's more. What more? David asked. I'm evicting you because you need to learn to be independent, Helen said. David, you're 39 years old. You should be supporting your own family, not depending on your mother. But we were contributing to the household, David protested. You were living rent-free in a house you couldn't afford, Helen said. That's not contributing, that's taking advantage. So there's nothing I can do to change your mind, David asked. There's something you can do, Helen said, surprising him. What? David asked eagerly. You can prove that you've learned your lesson, Helen said. How? David asked. By finding your own place to live and supporting your family without my help, Helen said. But we don't have money for deposits and rent, David said. Then you'll have to figure it out, Helen said. David, I'm not going to rescue you from the consequences of your poor planning. But what about the kids? David asked. They don't deserve to suffer because of our mistakes. You're right, Helen said. They don't deserve to suffer. Which is why I'm going to make you an offer. What kind of offer? David asked. I'll loan you the money for a deposit and first month's rent on an apartment, Helen said. David felt a surge of hope. Really? But, Helen continued, it's a loan, not a gift. You'll pay me back with interest. And there are conditions. What conditions? David asked. First, you'll find an apartment you can actually afford on your income, Helen said. No more living beyond your means. Okay, David agreed. Second, you'll pay me back within 2 years. Helen said. If you miss a payment, the entire balance becomes due immediately. Understood, David said. Third, Helen said, you'll prove that you can be responsible tenants by maintaining the apartment and paying your rent on time. We can do that, David said. And fourth, Helen said, you'll treat me with respect and gratitude for this help, not like I owe it to you. Of course, David said quickly. David, Helen said seriously, this is your last chance. If you take advantage of my help again, if you treat me badly again, if you act entitled again, I will never help you with anything ever again. I understand, David said. Mom, thank you. This means everything to us. Don't thank me yet, Helen said. Thank me when you've proven you can be independent and responsible. David felt tears of relief streaming down his face. His mother was giving them one more chance, but he understood that it truly was their last chance. The question now was whether David and Amanda could learn to live within their means and treat Helen with the respect she deserved, or whether they would squander this final opportunity for redemption. 3 days after receiving the eviction notice, David and Amanda were discovering just how unprepared they were for independent living. Every apartment they looked at required first month's rent, last month's rent, and a security deposit money they simply didn't have. After 2 years of living rent-free, this one requires $4,500 upfront, Amanda said, looking at yet another rental listing on her phone. Where are we supposed to get $4,500? I don't know, David said, slumped on the couch in what was still technically his mother's living room. Maybe we could ask for a loan. From who? Amanda asked. Your mother isn't speaking to us. My parents don't have that kind of money, and our credit cards are already maxed out. David realized with growing horror that they had been living beyond their means for years, only managing to stay afloat because they had no housing costs. Without his mother's free accommodation, their financial house of cards was collapsing. Maybe we could ask Mom to give us more time, David suggested. She won't even take your phone calls, Amanda pointed out. And frankly, after what we said to her, I don't blame her. David was surprised to hear Amanda admit fault. You think we were wrong. I think we were incredibly stupid, Amanda said. David, your mother was letting us live in her beautiful house for free, and we told her she should be grateful we were there. We were trying to establish boundaries, David said weakly. We were being entitled brats, Amanda corrected. And now we're paying the price. Their conversation was interrupted by Tyler coming home from school with a confused expression. Dad, Tyler said, why is Grandma's lawyer at school talking to the office? David felt his stomach drop. What lawyer? The man who came to the house the other day, Tyler said. He was in the principal's office with some papers. David and Amanda exchanged alarmed glances. Did he say what he wanted? Something about school records? Tyler said. The secretary said they needed to update emergency contact information. David realized what was happening. His mother was removing him and Amanda as emergency contacts for the children, further severing their connection to the house and establishing that they were no longer permanent residents. Why would Grandma do that? Tyler asked. David struggled to explain without frightening his son. Grandma is just updating some paperwork. But we're still going to live here, right? Tyler asked. David couldn't bring himself to tell his 13-year-old son that they would be homeless in less than a month. We're working on our living situation, David said vaguely. That evening, Helen returned home for the first time since serving the eviction notice. She walked into her house with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where she stood legally and morally. Mom, David said, jumping up from the couch when he saw her. We need to talk. Hello, David, Helen said politely but coolly. How was your day? Mom, please, David said. We need to discuss this eviction notice. What's to discuss? Helen asked. You have 27 days to find alternative housing. But Mom, David said desperately, we don't have anywhere to go. That's not my problem, Helen said calmly. Not your problem, Amanda asked, entering the room. Helen, we're family, are we? Helen asked. Because yesterday you told me I should be grateful you let me stay in my own house. We didn't mean it like that, David said. How did you mean it? Helen asked. David struggled to find words that would make their behavior seem less awful than it had been. We were just trying to establish some household guidelines that included me asking permission to enter rooms in my own house, Helen said. Guidelines that treated me like an unwelcome guest in my own home. We were trying to create harmony, Amanda said. You were trying to take control, Helen corrected. And now you're learning what it feels like when someone else has control. Mom, please, David begged. We're sorry, we made a mistake. Yes, you did, Helen agreed. And now you're facing the consequences of that mistake. But what about the kids? David asked. Emma and Tyler don't deserve to be homeless because of our mistakes. You're right, Helen said. They don't deserve that. Which is why you should have thought about them before you decided to bite the hand that was feeding you. Mom, we can't afford to move out, Amanda said. We don't have money for deposits and rent. Then you should have saved some money over the past 2 years instead of spending everything you earned, Helen said. We were contributing to the household, David protested. You were living rent-free in a house worth $3,000 a month in rental value, Helen said. Whatever you contributed doesn't come close to what you saved. David did some quick math in his head and realized his mother was right. Over 2 years, they had saved at least $72,000 in rent alone, not counting utilities, property taxes, and maintenance costs. We didn't realize, David said weakly. You didn't want to realize, Helen corrected. You were comfortable taking advantage of my generosity, and you convinced yourselves you deserved it. So what do you want us to do? Amanda asked. I want you to find your own place to live, Helen said simply. I want you to learn to support yourselves without depending on me. In 27 days, David asked. You've had 2 years to prepare for independence, Helen said. If you're not ready, that's your fault, not mine. Helen started to walk toward the stairs, then turned back to face them. Oh, and David, Helen said. I've changed the locks. Your key no longer works. You changed the locks? David asked, shocked. This is my house, Helen said. I decide who has access to it. But our things are here, Amanda protested. Your things can stay until you move out, Helen said. But you no longer have unrestricted access to my home. How are we supposed to get in? David asked. You can knock, Helen said. Like any other visitor. The full impact of their situation was beginning to hit David and Amanda. They were no longer residents of the house. They were unwelcome guests being allowed to stay temporarily. Mom, David said, I know we hurt your feelings, but this seems extreme. Extreme, Helen asked. David, you told me I should be grateful you let me stay in my own house. You established rules for how I could behave in my own home. You treated me like a burden you were graciously tolerating, and you think my response is extreme. We were just trying to create boundaries, Amanda said. You were trying to take over my house, Helen said. And now you're learning that I won't allow that to happen. So, there's nothing we can do to fix this, David asked. You can find your own place to live and learn to be independent adults, Helen said. You can stop taking advantage of family members who are trying to help you. But we're your family, David said. Family members treat each other with respect, Helen said. They don't tell each other to be grateful for living in their own homes. Helen walked upstairs, leaving David and Amanda to contemplate their rapidly approaching homelessness. What are we going to do? Amanda asked. I don't know, David said. Maybe we could stay in a motel until we find something. With what money? Amanda asked. David, we have maybe $2,000 in our checking account. That won't last long, in a motel. Maybe we could ask your parents for help, David suggested. My parents live in a one-bedroom apartment, Amanda said. There's no room for a family of 4. David was beginning to understand that they had burned their bridges with the one person who had been supporting them. His mother had been their safety net, and they had not only taken it for granted but had actively insulted her for providing it. Maybe we could apologize, David said. Really apologize, not just say we're sorry. What would a real apology look like? Amanda asked. David thought about the question. It would mean acknowledging that we were wrong to treat Mom like she was lucky to live in her own house. It would mean admitting that we took advantage of her generosity. It would mean promising to treat her with the respect she deserves. And you think that would be enough? Amanda asked. I don't know, David said honestly. But it's the only chance we have. That night, David lay awake, thinking about how drastically his life had changed in just a few days. 3 days ago, he had felt confident and in control, establishing rules for his mother in what he had come to think of as his house. Now he was facing homelessness and had no idea how to support his family. The woman he had told to be grateful was teaching him what he should have been grateful for all along. A mother who loved him enough to help him, even when he didn't deserve it. But David was about to learn that some lessons come too late, and some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt with simple apologies. The next morning, David woke up feeling confident that his mother had finally understood the new dynamic of their household. He and Amanda had discussed their conversation with Helen late into the night, congratulating themselves on finally establishing proper boundaries. "I think that went well," Amanda had said as they prepared for bed. "Your mother needed to hear some hard truths about the situation. She seemed to take it better than I expected." David had agreed. "I was worried she'd throw a tantrum, but she was actually pretty reasonable about it." They had no idea that Helen had spent the night making phone calls and preparing documents that would turn their world upside down. David came downstairs to find Helen already in the kitchen, dressed in her best outfit, and looking more composed than he had seen her in months. "Good morning, Mom," David said cautiously. "You're up early." "Good morning, David," Helen replied with a smile that seemed oddly serene. "I have some errands to run today." "Errands?" David asked, pouring himself coffee. "Yes," Helen said. "I have some important business to take care of." Amanda entered the kitchen, still in her robe, and immediately sensed tension in the air. "What's going on?" "Nothing's going on," Helen said pleasantly. "I'm just having my morning coffee before I head out." "Head out where?" Amanda asked suspiciously. "To see my lawyer," Helen said casually, as if she were discussing a trip to the grocery store. David felt his stomach drop. "Your lawyer? Why do you need to see a lawyer?" "Oh, just some paperwork that needs to be updated," Helen said vaguely. "What kind of paperwork?" Amanda demanded. Helen stood up and rinsed her coffee cup in the sink. "The kind that clarifies who owns what around here." David and Amanda exchanged alarmed glances. "Mom, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about making sure everyone understands their legal position in this household," Helen said. "Legal position?" Amanda asked, her voice rising. "Helen, what are you planning?" "I'm not planning anything," Helen said innocently. "I'm just taking care of some business that should have been taken care of a long time ago." Helen picked up her purse and headed toward the door. "Oh, and David, you might want to check your mail later today. I think you'll find it very interesting." "What mail?" David called after her, but Helen was already walking out the door. David and Amanda stood in the kitchen, staring at each other with growing panic. "What do you think she's up to?" Amanda asked. "I don't know," David said, "but I have a bad feeling about this." "She can't do anything to us," Amanda said, though she sounded less confident than usual. "We live here, we have rights, do we?" David asked Amanda. "This is her house. Legally, we're just guests." "We're not guests," Amanda protested. "We've been living here for 2 years. We've contributed to the household. We have established residency." "Have we?" David asked, doubt creeping into his voice. "Amanda, we've never paid rent. We don't have a lease. We're not on any utility bills." Amanda felt a chill of fear. "But we've been taking care of the house. We've been supporting the household. We've been living here rent-free," David said, the reality of their situation beginning to sink in. "Amanda, we might not have any legal rights at all." Their conversation was interrupted by the doorbell. David opened the door to find a young man in a suit holding an envelope. "David Martinez?" the man asked. "Yes," David replied warily. "You're being served with legal documents," the man said, handing David the envelope. David's hands shook as he opened the envelope and read the contents. His face went pale as he processed what he was seeing. "What is it?" Amanda demanded, grabbing the papers from his hands. Amanda read the document and felt her world crumble. "This is a notice to vacate." "A what?" David asked, though he had heard her clearly. "Your mother is evicting us," Amanda said, her voice barely above a whisper. David read over Amanda's shoulder, his heart sinking with every word. The notice was formal, legal, and absolutely clear. They had 30 days to vacate the premises. "She can't do this," Amanda said desperately. "We live here. This is our home." "It's her home," David said quietly. "We're just... We were just staying here." "But we have rights," Amanda protested. "We've been living here for 2 years." David read through the legal document more carefully. "Amanda, according to this, we're classified as guests at will who can be asked to leave at any time." "Guests at will?" Amanda asked. "What does that mean?" "It means we have no legal right to stay here," David said. "It means Mom can kick us out whenever she wants." Amanda felt panic rising in her chest. "But where will we go? We don't have money for a deposit on a new place. We don't have furniture. Everything here belongs to your mother." David realized the full scope of their predicament. They had been living so comfortably in his mother's house that they had never bothered to save money or prepare for independence. They had assumed they could stay indefinitely. "We need to call Mom," David said. "We need to work this out." David called Helen's cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. He tried again with the same result. "She's not answering," David said. "Try the lawyer's office," Amanda suggested. David called the law firm listed on the notice to vacate. "I need to speak with Helen Martinez," he told the receptionist. "I'm sorry, but Mrs. Martinez is in a meeting," the receptionist said. "Can I take a message?" "This is her son," David said desperately. "It's urgent. I'll pass along the message, but Mrs. Martinez left strict instructions that she's not to be disturbed today." The receptionist said. David hung up the phone and looked at Amanda with growing despair. "She won't take my calls. This is insane," Amanda said. "She can't just kick us out because we asked her to respect some boundaries, can't she?" David asked. "Amanda, think about what we said to her yesterday. We told her she should be grateful we let her stay in her own house." "We were just trying to establish some rules," Amanda said defensively. "We were treating her like a burden in her own home," David said, the full weight of their mistake beginning to hit him. "So what do we do now?" Amanda asked. "I don't know," David said. "I guess we start looking for a place to live." "With what money?" Amanda demanded. "David, we've been living rent-free for 2 years. We don't have savings for a deposit, first month's rent, utilities, furniture. We have nothing." David realized that Amanda was right. They had been so comfortable living in his mother's house that they had never prepared for the possibility of having to leave. "Maybe we can talk to her," David said. "Maybe we can apologize and work something out." "Apologize for what?" Amanda asked. "For asking for reasonable boundaries. For treating her like she was lucky to live in her own house," David said. "We didn't say that," Amanda protested. "Yes, we did," David said. "Amanda, I told my mother she should be grateful we let her stay in her own house. How did we think that was okay?" Amanda was beginning to see their situation from a different perspective, and she didn't like what she saw. "So what are you saying?" "I'm saying we messed up," David said. "We got too comfortable, too entitled. We started treating Mom's generosity like it was our right." "But we helped around the house," Amanda said. "We contributed. We lived rent-free in a beautiful house for 2 years," David said. "Whatever we contributed doesn't come close to what we saved in rent and utilities." Their conversation was interrupted by Emma coming downstairs for breakfast. "What's wrong?" Emma asked, seeing her parents' distressed expressions. "You both look upset." David and Amanda looked at each other, realizing they would have to explain to their children that they were about to be homeless. "Sweetheart," David said carefully, "we need to talk to you and Tyler about something important." "What?" Emma asked, immediately sensing something serious was happening. "We're going to have to move," Amanda said. "Move?" Emma asked. "Why?" "I like living here with Grandma. Grandma wants us to find our own place," David said, trying to put the best spin on the situation. "But why?" Emma asked. "Did we do something wrong?" David felt tears welling up in his eyes as he realized that his children were about to pay the price for his and Amanda's mistakes. "No, sweetheart," David said. "You didn't do anything wrong." But David knew that he and Amanda had done everything wrong. They had taken advantage of his mother's generosity, treated her with disrespect, and then had the audacity to tell her she should be grateful for their presence. Now they were about to learn what life was like without Helen's support, and David had a sinking feeling that it was going to be much harder than they had ever imagined. The woman they had told to be grateful was about to show them what they should have been grateful for all along. If you enjoy family drama stories that will shock you to your core, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. Today I'm going to tell you a story that will leave you absolutely speechless. A story about a mother who was told to be grateful for living in her own home, and how she responded with the most devastating power move imaginable. This story begins with Mrs. Helen Martinez, a 73-year-old widow who owns a beautiful 2-story house in San Antonio, Texas. Helen lost her husband Carlos 2 years ago to cancer, and since then, she's been allowing her son David and his family to live with her in what everyone assumed was an act of generosity on her part. David, now 39 years old, moved in with his mother after losing his job during the pandemic. He's married to Amanda, a woman with expensive tastes and a sense of entitlement that would make royalty blush. They have 2 children, Emma, age 16, and Tyler, age 13. What started as a temporary arrangement has stretched into 2 years of David's family living rent-free in Helen's spacious home. Mom, David said during breakfast one morning, Amanda and I need to talk to you about some house rules. Helen looked up from her coffee, surprised by her son's serious tone. House rules? What kind of house rules? Well, David continued, glancing at Amanda for support. We've been living here for 2 years now, and we think it's time to establish some boundaries. Helen felt a chill of apprehension. What kind of boundaries? Amanda leaned forward with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Helen, we appreciate you letting us stay here, but we need more space and privacy for our family. More space? Helen asked, confused. This house has 5 bedrooms. That's not the issue, David said. The issue is that you're always around. We need family time without you hovering. Helen felt like she'd been slapped. Hovering. I live here too, David. We know, Amanda said with false patience. But you need to understand that we're the ones raising children here. We need to be able to parent without interference. I don't interfere, Helen protested. I help with homework. I cook dinner. That's exactly what we're talking about, David interrupted. Mom, you need to step back and let us handle our own family. Helen stared at her son in disbelief. For 2 years, she had welcomed his family into her home, helped with childcare, contributed to groceries, and tried to be supportive. Now they were treating her like an unwelcome guest. So what exactly are you asking me to do? Helen asked quietly. We're asking you to respect our space, Amanda said. Maybe spend more time in your room, or find activities outside the house. Activities outside the house, Helen repeated. Amanda, this is my home. We know that, David said quickly, but it's our home too now. We all need to make adjustments. Helen felt tears welling up in her eyes. David, I've made nothing but adjustments for 2 years. I gave up my sewing room so Emma could have a bigger bedroom. I stopped having my book club meetings here because you said they were too noisy. I've been tiptoeing around my own house trying not to disturb your family, and we appreciate that, Amanda said, but we need more. More what? Helen asked. More consideration for our privacy, David said. Mom, you can't just walk into the living room when we're having family time. Family time? Helen asked, her voice rising. I'm family too. Your extended family, Amanda said coldly. We're the nuclear family. Helen felt her heart breaking. Extended family. I'm David's mother. Mom, calm down, David said. We're not saying you're not important. We're just saying you need to respect our boundaries. What boundaries? Helen demanded. You want me to hide in my room like a prisoner in my own house. We want you to be more considerate, Amanda said. For example, you need to knock before entering any room. You need to ask permission before joining family activities, and you need to understand that some conversations are private. Helen couldn't believe what she was hearing. Ask permission. In my own house, Mom, David said, his patience clearly wearing thin. You need to understand something. We've been supporting this household for 2 years. We pay for groceries, utilities, maintenance. You should be grateful we let you stay here. The words hit Helen like a physical blow. Grateful you let me stay. David, this is my house. Technically, yes, Amanda said. But we're the ones making it livable. Without us, you'd be rattling around here alone, probably unable to afford the upkeep. I can afford my own house, Helen said firmly. Can you? David asked. Mom, you're 73 years old on a fixed income. This house is expensive to maintain. I managed just fine before you moved in, Helen said. Did you? Amanda asked. Because from what I remember, you were struggling with the yard work, the repairs, the cleaning. We've been taking care of everything. Helen felt confused and hurt. It was true that David and Amanda had helped with some household tasks, but she had never asked them to. They had volunteered, and she had assumed it was their way of contributing since they weren't paying rent. I never asked you to take care of anything, Helen said. You didn't have to ask, David said. We saw what needed to be done, and we did it. Mom, you should be grateful we're here to help you. Grateful, Helen repeated slowly. You want me to be grateful that you're living in my house rent-free, telling me how to behave in my own home, and treating me like an unwelcome guest. We want you to be grateful that you're not alone, Amanda said. Helen, most women your age are in nursing homes or assisted living. You're lucky you have family willing to take care of you. Take care of me, Helen asked. I don't need anyone to take care of me. Mom, you're being unrealistic, David said. You're getting older. You need family around to help you. And in exchange for that help, Amanda added, you need to respect our family's needs. Helen looked at her son and daughter-in-law, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. They weren't living with her out of temporary necessity or family love. They had moved in and taken over, treating her like a burden they were graciously tolerating. So let me understand this, Helen said slowly. You want me to be grateful that you've taken over my house, established rules for how I can behave in my own home, and are now telling me I should thank you for the privilege of living here. We want you to be realistic about the situation, David said. Mom, we're a family of 4. You're one person. The majority rules. The majority rules, Helen asked incredulously. Helen, Amanda said with exaggerated patience, we're not trying to be mean. We're trying to establish a harmonious living situation for everyone. By making me a prisoner in my own home, Helen said. By establishing reasonable boundaries, David corrected. Mom, you need to understand that this isn't just your house anymore. It's our family home. Your family home, Helen repeated. Yes, Amanda said firmly. We live here. We contribute to the household. We're raising our children here. This is our home too. Helen felt something shift inside her. A cold, hard clarity settled over her as she realized exactly what was happening. Her son and his wife had moved into her house and were now claiming it as their own, treating her like an unwelcome relative they were generously allowing to stay. I see, Helen said quietly. Good, David said, relief evident in his voice. I'm glad you understand. Oh, I understand perfectly, Helen said, standing up from the breakfast table. I understand that you think you can take over my house and then demand that I be grateful for the privilege of living in it. Mom, that's not what we're saying, David protested. That's exactly what you're saying, Helen said. You want me to be grateful you let me stay. Well, David, I have news for you. What news? David asked warily. You're about to find out what it's like when I don't let you stay, Helen said. What do you mean? Amanda asked, suddenly looking nervous. I mean, Helen said with a smile that made both David and Amanda uncomfortable, that you're going to learn the difference between being a guest and being a homeowner. Helen walked out of the kitchen, leaving David and Amanda staring after her in confusion and growing alarm. What do you think she meant by that? Amanda whispered. I don't know, David said. But he had a sinking feeling that his mother was planning something that would make them regret their conversation. Helen went to her bedroom and pulled out a locked box from her closet. Inside the box were the deed to her house, her will, and the phone number of her lawyer. She had hoped never to need these documents to assert her rights with her own family, but David and Amanda had just forced her hand. If they wanted to play the game of who really controlled the house, Helen was about to show them that she held all the cards. The next morning, David and Amanda would receive a wake-up call that would shatter their comfortable assumptions about their living situation and teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives about respect, gratitude, and the consequences of taking family for granted.